What is up, guys? Rick Kackis here. Thank you so much for stopping by, and today, rise and shine because it's the dawn of the season of Dawn for Destiny 2. This update has just become available to download for all players, and Bungie posted the official patch notes containing a ton of Sandbox updates and changes to the game, both that have been previously announced and some that we have never seen before and you definitely want to be aware of before starting your new seasonal journey. And so, let's get started by going over these main gameplay impacting changes. First off, if you love finishing enemies and you have multiple finishers, you can now favorite different finishers, and then when you perform a finisher, it's going to play one of your favorites randomly. So get to doing that and show off in front of your friends. Moving on from there, abilities. So firstly, for the Titan, the Sunbreaker code of the Fireforge, the top path for Vulcan's Rage, they made it much more angry apparently by increasing the detonation time minimum from 0 seconds to 0.5 seconds, and they increased the cluster spread. For Hammer of Soul, impact damage decreased from 70 all the way down to 5, but the detonation damage increased from 205 to 270. So these changes also affect Bottom Tree Sunbreaker. Moving on, for the Sunbreaker code of the Devastator, the middle path, throwing hammer damage increased from 100 to 120, and the pickup radius has gone from 2 meters to 3.5 meters. For Roaring Flames, they increased the damage bonus from 20% per stack to 30% per stack in PvE. That change was actually unknown before. And from 10% to 25% in PvP, which we did know. And they increased the duration from 15 seconds to 20 seconds. Moving on, for Burning Maul, increased idle super duration from 21.2 seconds to 28.5 seconds. For Light Attack, they reduced the super energy cost from 5% down to 3%, and they tuned movement and player feedback. For the Heavy Attack, slightly reduced speed of Heavy Slam projectile, and they slightly reduced tracking radius of Heavy Slam projectile as well. But they increased the height of projectile hitbox to more easily hit airborne opponents, and they increased the super energy cost from 6% to 8% to account for this increase in power. Also, they slightly increased the terminal explosion size. Moving on from there, the Sunbreaker code of the Siegebreaker, which is the bottom path. So, for the Mortar Blast perk, they increased the explosion radius from 5 meters to 6 meters. And for Soul Invictus, burning targets you kill also make sunspots. That's a big deal. Burning targets killed now trigger the heal, and kills with the Sun Warrior buff active can now make sunspots. This is based on weighted enemy killed, and a sunspot is created when the threshold of 1 is reached. So players and bosses just give you 1 off the bat and will create a sunspot. Majors 0.5, minors 0.25. Also 1 second cooldown on creating sunspots. So you are going to be making so much more sunspots this season. Also for Sun Warrior, they increased the ability recharge scaler by 35%, touched up the effects and audio for allied sunspots. So Bottom Tree got a huge buff as well. Check that out too. The Striker code of the Missile, the middle path, Thunder Crash, got a buff 2,700 damage to 3,200, and the in-flight damage from 100 to 200, so you can now kill enemies by riding through them. And they slightly increase the amount of time you have in the air after activation. So that is it for the Titan. Let's move on to the Hunter. For the Gunslinger, Way of the Outlaw, the top path, Explosive Knife, they changed to Proximity Explosive Knife. It sticks to surfaces. The fuse time is 14 seconds. Adjusted impact damage to 14, but detonation damage all the way to 105. For a 6-shooter, adjusted the damage falloff of this Golden Gun Super variant. Damage falloff starts at 30 meters when firing from the hip and 40 meters when aimed down sights. Moving on from there, for the way of the sharpshooter, the bottom path. So for Knife Juggler, changed to weighted knife. Damage changed from 120 to 140, precision modifier from 1.3 all the way to 1.5, and headshots are a one-hit kill with this new knife in PvP. Additionally, updated the throw animation to be longer to compensate for one-shot capability. Knife projectile moves faster and has less drop than previously. Knives bounce after impacting the environment. And practice makes perfect. Super energy granted reduced by 16%, increased the buff duration by 50%, and precision kills now grant 2 stacks. Moving on to the Crowd Pleaser perk. The original perks, so precision damage, precision hits with golden gun generate orbs of light, have been moved to the Line 'em Up perk. Instead, we have a new perk, Knock 'em Down. Precision kills increase weapon stability and aim down sight speed. Buff duration starts at 10 seconds, and each kill or assist adds time with a cap of 25 seconds. Time added is variable weighted on the enemy killed and whether it was a precision kill. While the buff timer is above 20 seconds, your golden gun does 30% more damage, determined upon moment of cast and lasts for the whole super. And this burns the buff, so it disappears when you activate your super. And it does not stack with Celestial Nighthawk, unfortunately. Moving on from there, the Line 'em Up perk now has a passive bonus to aim assist and range while aiming. Now has the precision damage and precision hits with golden gun generate orbs from the previous perk. Moving on from there, the Night Stalker, Way of the Pathfinder, the bottom path. Vanish in Smoke, they added a short period, 0.8 seconds, after the invisibility is applied, where firing weapons or performing other actions would not break invisibility, so you can throw your smoke grenades at teammates, and if they're mid-shooting, they have a little bit of time to stop shooting and stay invisible. Moving on from there, we have the Warlock. So, the Dawnblade Daybreak for all paths reduced the speed of Burst Glide activations while in Super. Moving on from there, the Dawnblade Attunement of Sky, the top path, Swift Strike, changed to Celestial Flare, a new melee, shoots 3 spiraling homing projectiles, approximately 35 damage per projectile, so just that times 3. Winged Sun also allows for Celestial Flare activations, no longer gives grenade energy for aerial kills, gives more melee energy for aerial kills. For the Heat Rises perk redesigned with new gameplay. Consume grenade to gain Heat Rises buff, dramatically reduces in-air accuracy penalty, changes movement mode, reduced glide upkeep cost by 99%, reduced glide activation cost by 99%. Set glide velocity and agility to a combination of both strafe and burst glide. Moving on, Icarus Dash now has 2 dodges per 5 seconds. Dodge now has a slightly upward velocity, and dodge in super is now 1 long dodge per second. Okay, so the Dawnblade Attunement of Grace, the middle path, Guiding Flame, doubled the range that the Empower effect is applied from 12 meters to 24 meters. Huge. Divine Protection, increased radius that the healing grenade is applied to friendly targets from 1 meter to 3.5 meters. Benevolent Dawn, buff can now be refreshed if additional friendly targets are healed and empowered while you still have the buff. They removed the cooldown, can continuously proc, and they reduced the energy regeneration by 15%. This was needed as it was much more consistent, procs more often, and for longer. Now for Well of Radiance, standing in the well now grants 20% reduced damage against damage from other players. Sword object no longer takes precision damage. Moving on to the Dawnblade Attunement of Flame, which is the bottom path for Phoenix Dive. Now heals a fixed amount over time. Healing is interruptible from incoming damage while in Super. It returns super energy depending on how much you've healed and has diminishing returns the longer the super is active. Moving on for the Voidwalker Attunement of Fission, the middle path The handheld supernova adjusted grenade charge time so that it lines up with the animation and effects. This should make it feel more consistent. Okay, for stat values, this is actually a big deal here. So class ability cooldown is now governed by player stats. So your hunter dodge cooldown is modified by the mobility stat. So the more mobility you have as the hunter, the faster your dodge comes back. So you're now looking for armor with mobility a lot more. The same is true for Titan and the resilience stat, and Warlock and the recovery stat. Paragon mods have been depreciated as a result of this. Moving on from there, we have weapon changes. So for the exotics, the Divinity will no longer stack with other buffs, unfortunately. The Xenophage, PvE damage increased by a whopping 50%. PvP ammo from heavy ammo crates is going up to 4 to 6, and it was previously 3 to 4. And they fixed an issue where this weapon would gain overall ammo when swapping from another power weapon to this weapon. That glitch was also addressed on the Leviathan's Breath. Moving on to the Cerberus +1, fixed an issue where repeatedly pulling the trigger would give you a faster fire rate while the focus fire catalyst was enabled. Hopefully they just made the fire rate faster overall. Then the Vow, increasing the reserves for this weapon via armor perks no longer increases the starting and respawning ammo in the Crucible. For the Monte Carlo, actually it's been nerfed. It no longer gives you a 100% chance to trigger on Guardian kills and now matches the combatant chance. Moving on to linear fusion rifles. Precision damage increased by 20% across the board. Unfortunately, it does not affect the sleeper simulant, and they significantly increased target acquisition at close to medium ranges. So linear fusion rifles straight buffed. Moving on to sidearms, increased target acquisition across the board. For the Master of Arms perk in the Recluse, they removed the precision damage function. This weapon still provides a damage bonus, but non-precision damage no longer disproportionately increased. The Magnificent Howl perk for the Luna's Howl and Not Forgotten, they fixed a bug that was causing the perk to apply twice over the network instead of just once. And for sticky grenades, you can no longer stand on them, which is actually a big deal for people getting out of the map. One more thing that's kind of hidden, but it's a big deal. A selection of Year 1 legendary weapons have had a facelift and have joined the Engram loot pool to keep the edge transit company. So now you have brand new weapons with, well, old weapons that are brand new because they can now get random rolls added to the loot pool. So it's definitely worth opening up those legendary Engrams instead of just mindlessly deleting them. Moving on from there, armor changes. So for exotics, the Wings of Sacred Dawn, it now grants a 15% damage resistance while in the hover state. For the One-Eyed Mask, it no longer grants an overshield on killing your marked target. The Peregrine Greaves has been massively nerfed because it no longer disproportionately increases the damage of Hammer Strike. So damage is equalized to around 300% of the damage of a normal shoulder charge against a single target. So definitely Hammer Strike was the best thing to run with it, and it was insane with Peregrine plus Hammer Strike, so that is a little disappointing as someone who ran that quite a bit. Moving on, the Claws of Ahamkara fixed an issue where both melee charges could be consumed on one melee hit. Armor mods. So they removed the stacking restrictions on many armor mods. So similar mods can now be stacked to improve the effect. However, stacking mods with similar effects provides diminishing returns, granting less relative benefits than two different mods would. So they reduced the efficiency of ammo scavenger mods to their pre-Shadowkeep levels to accommodate for mod stacking because of this. Generalized ammo finder and ammo scavenger mods are unlocked for all players in the head armor mod and leg armor mod sockets respectively, and they added Season of Dawn armor mod sockets. So Vanguard, Crucible, Gambit, and Iron Banner armor will all drop with this season's seasonal mod socket, allowing them to use the new Season of Dawn armor mods. Also, the Mercury Destination armor can also use these new mods. Moving on, exotic engrams have been changed. They're now going to act as faded engrams, so if you open an exotic engram, you will always get an exotic that you didn't have until you collect all of them, at which point exotic engrams are always going to give you armor so that you can chase those god stat rolls instead of just getting weapon duplicates that are totally useless. Moving on from there for activities, Nightfall the Ordeal. So the Cabal have invaded the Ordeal, so 3 new strikes have been added to the Ordeal lineup and removed 3 from Season 8 strikes. So they added 2 new Cabal modifiers and 3 new strike-specific modifiers. They added Cabal modifiers to the rotation. Vehicles now give Nightfall score, and they fixed up the tooltip name for the Scarlet Keep on Legendary difficulty. And that is it for the main changes that came with this update. A lot of cool stuff, some definitely like under the radar buffs, especially to supers that I didn't talk about previously, and I'm glad I learned today. Guys, that is it for the video. I hope you enjoyed, found this informative, and if you did, please remember to help me out by simply rating and especially sharing this video. If you guys want to see more Destiny 2 content similar to this, don't be afraid to slap that subscribe button. If you want to get in touch with me and keep up to date with the latest channel activity, the best way is to follow me on Twitter at @RickKackis. That's linked in the description down below. Again, I hope you enjoyed the video, and as always, have a good day.